Okay, so we've cut our fabric on the bias and we have our 1-inch strip. And the reason we want it on the bias is so we've got stretch in the fabric. We want to snip off the corner so we can feed it into the bias binder maker. If you don't have one of these, don't worry, you can use a Hera marker, and I'll write some instructions below this video for that. So, and I've pre-sprayed that strip with a little bit of flatter, which is just to help make the fabric iron nicer. Okay, so then when you iron, you don't want to iron directly right close to the tip. You want to leave a little bit of a gap, like I am here, and just press. Just keep an eye at the other end to make sure it's not distorting when it's pulling through, and just slowly iron and slide and press. Now, if I was doing a project with a lot of smaller bias, because this finished bias is 1/2 inch wide, I would probably buy pre-made binding that was fusible, that had fusing on it, and there is such a thing. Clover does a really great pre-made bias. But for this project with the basket handles, I wanted to use Patchwork fabric. And give it a good press without your pencil in the way. And flip it over, and I think I'm going to press it again here. Here we go. Yep, there you go. All right, it's ready to use. Okay, I'm going to show you how to iron the bias binding in place to get a curve and to glue it down. So first we want to take our square, our 8.5 inch square, which gives us 2 handles, and just give it a gentle crease on the diagonal, on each diagonal, to get the center point. This is so when we put the template underneath for the handle, we can line it up with the markings on the template. Now you might need a light box if your fabric isn't as light as this, and I've also used a fabric that's screen printed, so it looks a bit jaggedy when I'm doing it, but it doesn't matter because we're going to glue over the top of it. So you just trace your handle lightly. I like to use a I can't remember the name, a 2B lead in a 0.7mm mechanical pencil. It's just my preference. It's nice and soft, you don't have to press hard. I use it for all my hand piecing tracing. Yep, and just trace the other side. So this 8.5 inch square is larger than what we need for the final block. We'll cut it across the diagonal when we're finished, and then attach it to the rest of the block, and then trim it down to size. You can see that in the pattern. Okay, so we've got a nice hot iron. We just hold the bias to where we want to start, and just lightly start pressing, and with your other hand, if I get my stuff out of the way, that would help, hey? With your other hand, you just gently, as you're pressing, you just gently pull it on the curve. Just really gently. You don't have to pull hard, don't have to pull tight, just ease it into place. Now, it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, you just want to get a little curve in that bias. Because we've made bias binding, so we've cut the fabric on the bias and made our bias binding, it curves nice and easily. Okay. Now I prefer to use applique glue. This is Roxanne's Glue Based It. I like this glue because you don't need to use much at all. You really don't want to use much. If you use too much, it's really hard sometimes to separate fabrics. It dries really fast, so you just dab glue and then on the line, and then just carefully, place your bind. And because you've pre-ironed that binding, it just helps. It's already got a curve in it, so it should go down pretty easily. That's where I dropped the glue, which you can't see it happening there. Alrighty. So yeah, just continue to go around. Just take your time, don't glue the whole arc, just glue sections as you go. And just dab, 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 dab. And if you miss a spot, you can just go back later and add a little bit of glue. And you want to try and keep it away from the edges. So so when you're sewing, you don't come into any glue. So that's why you just dab onto the line and then place your binding over the top. And like I said, this dries pretty quick, so I'm moving pretty fast here. I do give it a little press just to set it. And then I'm just going to snip it off on the crease because I'm going to do the other handle on the other side. So like I mentioned before, we're making 2 handles on one piece here. The reason I've done it this way is so that you're not dealing with a bias on the triangle as well when you're trying to handle this piece and do the, pardon the pun, handle whilst you're working with this piece. and hand sewing the binding down and stuff. That long edge on that triangle over time will stretch, so this way it allows you to do all the work you need to do and then cut it at the end without having to deal with too much stretch. You watch me do this one, I'm a little bit more awkward. Oh, this one's okay. I think when I glue it I do something funky. And if you're wondering why I'm speaking in the past tense, I pre-recorded these videos and then I'm recording my voice over the top. It's just find it easier for me to record voice over the top of video rather than try and do it as I'm working. Too many things happening at once for me. Yeah, so this one's not looking as perfect as the other one. Doesn't matter. I'm going to glue it down and it'll come through perfectly as I want it to be. Which doesn't mean that it's perfect, it's just it's doing the job. So it's actually like, there's not a lot of mystery to this. It's pretty straightforward. It's a great little technique. It's a great way to get curves in bias binding. And you could, if you don't have the glue, you don't want to use the glue, you could easily pin it as you go. So it'd be a little trickier, but you could do it that way. Or you could try maybe using, if you've got like glue sticks from EPP, just trying little dabs. It's certain if that glue would dry as quick or be as good, but the Roxanne's I find works really, really well, and it's just my preference for this method to get these looking great. I'm going to give, oh yeah, see, press, and I see everyone makes boo-boos. Made a boo-boo, just okay. Just pressed it down. I pressed too hard and pulled. All good. And then I'm going to snip off the ends. Here's the fun part, we're now going to stitch down our handles, applique down. So I'm just going to show you how to do a quilter's knot. So you grab one end of your needle and you grab the other end of your threads. I'll make a little boo-boo here and then I reset it. No, and I pull it off, yep. So grab it, hold it, wrap around 3 or 4 times or how many you like, hold it carefully, not too tightly, pull it through, and you get a nice, neat, simple knot, not a messy knot. And I like to just snip the excess off. You don't have to do that. And now we're going to stitch it down. So you want to bring your needle up from at the bottom, up next to your first handle where you're going to stitch, and bring it up through the fabric, and you just take it back right down next to the handle and come back up and just catch the edge of the handle. So it's really simple, it's almost like a slip stitch. You just go down and then come back up. You don't want to take big bites, you want to do fairly narrow small stitches. If you take, it's not so bad with this sort of applique where it's already glued down and in shape and the edges are under already. We're not doing needle turn, so it wouldn't bubble up as much. Say if you're doing needle turn, you were taking bigger, wider stitches, you would start to get like that bubbly edge. So don't get too greedy with your stitches, keep them nice and narrow together. And then you can barely see my stitches there, and I can't remember the rule of thumb whether you match to the top of your fabric or the bottom of your fabric, but I actually, to be honest with you, just use about 3 or 4 different neutrals. I use a light dove grey, a light pink, and a light, actually probably just those 2, sometimes a pale yellow, depending on the fabric. Occasionally I'll come up against a fabric that will need better matching, but generally I can get away with it this way. With the applique, the biggest thing is getting the right needle and the right thread. So the finer the thread, I think, is better. This is a 60 weight. I often use a 60 or an 80 weight. And I am using a long applique needle here. Those tools do make a big difference.